Hi, my name's Rob Scott from CX Today, bringing you the latest news and conversation from the world of customer experience technology. So today I'm joined by Jennifer Murphy, who's a CMO at Five9, and Robin Garris, CEO at Metrigy. And we're going to be discussing how you can reimagine your customer experience. So welcome everybody.
Hey, Rob.
Great to be here, Rob.
Thanks for joining me. Very excited to talk through this session today. So just before we get started, however, should we just do a quick round of introductions? Jennifer, would you like to go first?
Sure. So my name's Jennifer Murphy. I am the Chief Marketing Officer at Five9. We are a leading provider of the intelligent cloud contact center.
Thank you. And Robin?
Yes, I'm Robin Garris. I'm CEO of Metrigy. We are a research and advisory company, and I personally focus on the CX area, which I think is such an awesome, fun, wonderful area.
Great, thanks very much. And to kick things off today, Jennifer, over to you first. I mean, what does it mean to reimagine your CX?
Sure. So I think when you think about reimagining customer experience, it's all about taking a step back and thinking differently about how you approach customer experience. So not taking a step back as in stopping, pausing, but taking a step back and just saying, well, what do we do for customer experience now? And how can we do that better? How can we do that differently? There could be one or many dimensions to that. The most common are often along the dimensions of people, process, and technology. So reimagining on the people side, it could be looking at how you blend, leverage live and digital agents and digital channels. On the process side, it could be how you optimize and integrate to create almost like a CX tool chain. And then on the technology side, for many customers, this can still be about moving from on-prem to the cloud. In other cases, it's going to be looking at how you leverage innovations in AI, automation, and make them both practical and impactful as well. So it's about that taking a step back and thinking about things differently so that you can better service the needs of your customers.
Great, thank you. And Robin, from your perspective, what does that mean to you?
Well, I think one of the things that Jennifer said about channels is really kind of resonating to me. Well, all of it's resonating, but that in particular, when you think about the increase in the number of channels that companies are using now, it's really increased quite a bit. So first of all, in our research, we're seeing that about 58% of customers interact with companies using digital channels. So that's pretty good. 39% of those interactions that start with digital end in voice. So there is a need to escalate. So we don't want to ever say we're going to get rid of voice or get rid of video. We're going to continue to use those real-time, live capabilities too, but we can solve a lot of customer issues using digital channels. And I would say, like, when we look at going from late 2019 to late 2020, we saw a lot of changes in the interaction channels. So in the areas of growth, mobile business chat grew, voice and video actually grew in the last year, social media, and in-app. So if you're in a web app and you want to communicate right from there. And then some of the areas that we're seeing drop a little bit, web chat, SMS, and email are the areas that are going down. They're still used. They're just not, they're not on the growth path right now. And one of the things I would say is just sort of a cautionary note is that a lot of companies are adding more interaction channels, but they're not integrating them with Omnichannel. I'll give you some numbers on that. If you look at, on average in 2019, companies had about 5 interaction channels. That went up to 6.6 in 2020. And I know that jump doesn't seem like a lot, but when you think of the total number of possible channels, percentage-wise, that's a pretty decent jump. The problem is only about 28% right now are integrating using Omnichannel. And that can cause some big problems if you don't do that. If I'm a customer and I'm on a web chat, now we have to escalate to a voice. If you can't see what we've just done, that's very frustrating to me as a customer. So those are some of the things I would be careful about, is if you're adding those new channels, make sure you're integrating them.
Yeah, I think that's really important, that keeping the context and the sort of data persistency as you bring across different channels. And that's the point of sort of Reimagine, right? Take a step back and say, well, we don't just need to add more technology. We actually need to think about the end-to-end customer journey.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? And Jennifer, why does choice matter to customer experience nowadays?
Yeah, well, I think it's all the different things that Robin talked about, right? And at the end of the day, people want customer experience to come to them and to be seamless. The whole point of customer experience and thinking about reimagining your customer experience is how do you make life easier for the customer, and how do you then therefore create a positive impact for your business? Because if you've got happy customers, you've got more likely loyalty amongst your customer base, increased opportunity for revenue, increased engagement, etc. So it's all about making life easier for the customer. So giving them choice in how they engage is a natural extension of that. And in many cases, that does mean providing self-service, but it can also mean getting the customer to a live agent when it matters most. And you see that in some of the stats that Robin shared, with voice and video actually going up, especially I think over the past year. That notion of empathy, personal and personalization has become even more important. So I think keeping the context, bringing the choice to the customer and not forcing them to have to engage on your terms, but on their terms.
Robin, look, I'm hearing lots and lots about agent experience right now. So what's changed recently?
Well, there's a lot of change happening right now in agent experience. And I think two of the big drivers for that are that companies are really realizing the power of customers. They need to make sure that that the experience that they're having with their agents are good ones, so that they're getting good ratings, they're getting good feedback, their customers are happy. And I think that's been kind of highlighted throughout the company because so many organizations have now put into place chief customer officers. So when you have this chief customer officer in place, he or she can be kind of highlighting to the rest of the executive team, look, we have to make sure that we're taking care of our agents because happy agents equal happy customers. So some of the things that we're seeing right now, nearly half of companies have a strategic initiative in place to support their agents better. So basically, they're doing things like allowing agents to work from home. They're agreeing to more flexible work hours. They're increasing compensation pretty substantially in some cases. They're adding agent analytics and supervisor coaching. Those two sort of combined are helping to improve the agents, help improve your performance. You don't want to be at the bottom of the leaderboard every day. You want to be moving up. You want to know what you're doing wrong. They're also, and I think this is in some ways understated, they're establishing career paths for agents. So, if I'm in a job where I feel like it's a dead-end job, I don't feel like I have promotional paths somewhere, that's going to make me start looking for another job pretty quickly, right? So I think that that's another thing we see organizations, in fact, they're telling us they're doing that, is just establishing that career path. So if I've done 2 years in the contact center and now I want to go into marketing or HR or product development, I have a path to get me there. And then they're also doing gamification and competitions and, gift card rewards, bonuses for being, top FCR, whatever kind of metric you're looking at in that day or that week or that month. That's really helping too. So I mentioned before, when we've done research and we look at if your agents are happy, that's great. What does that do? Well, when they're happy, it ends up reducing your turnover rate. And when we look just from a very quantitative perspective at turnover rate, when organizations can keep their turnover rate to less than 15% per year, they see a 26% improvement in customer ratings. That's pretty huge, And right now the average turnover rate's still about 23%, so it's still way too high. And then the other data point I'll throw out there too is that agent analytics. So being able to use those analytics to tell you how your agents are performing, where do they need to improve, where are they doing well. Those who are using them see a 30% improvement in their agent efficiency and a 40% improvement in their CX ratings. So you can tie the use of technology for your agents, new processes for your agents, better management for your agents, all of that you can tie to better business metrics, and that's what we're really looking for here.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because people are finally sort of realizing, the agent experience is key, because at the end of the day, they are the front line to the customers. They're representing your brand. They need to be armed to be on the front line. And in so many cases, they weren't armed. They didn't have the right data immediately. They maybe didn't have as much context, etc. So that's why I think capabilities, as Robin mentioned, like self-coaching, agent assist, gamification, continue to be a part of, contact center platforms. And, at Five9, definitely that's been an area that we've invested in and we've put more time and effort behind. And we're seeing a greater interest from our customers, right? How do they leverage both the agent and the supervisor capabilities in order to create that more engaged workforce and keep the turnover down? And I think that notion of career paths actually is a really interesting one, because, often agents sort of do get seen as that high turnover, but more and more there is more investment into the well-being, the development of the agents, because they are that front line to the business, and they're often the people who have to deal with some of the hardest problems, in customer service, and they need to be armed to be able to do that.
Yeah, it's a really good point. So, looking at the other side of the coin, we've got automation. That's another trend that is huge right now. Everywhere we look, is someone's talking automation. Certainly from a technology standpoint. So, why is that important, Jennifer, from your perspective? And what kinds of solutions have been delivered, around the automation piece?
Yeah, I mean, automation, in its various different forms has been around for a long time. It's not like it's anything new, but I think what people are now looking at is how can they leverage automation in a meaningful way. And I think a lot of the times automation gets a bit of a bad rep. I feel bad for it in some ways, because so many people think that automation is about how you get more efficient so that you can save costs, and you can maybe, lay off agents. But actually, that's not the case. Automation is about efficiency, and it can be about cost savings and being more scalable, but it's also about helping ensure that as an organization, you're creating balance and optimizing where you spend your dollars between where technology can help you to scale and where it can help you to get efficiencies, and where you need to have your best resources, your people. So for example, we see a lot of customers taking interest in things like intelligent virtual agents and automation of workflows, so that they can automate maybe the simpler tasks, and then they can redeploy, not get rid of, redeploy their agents and take the savings from automation and actually put it in the business, back into the business, or to hire more skilled agents, or give them, as Robin again mentioned, better career paths and training so that they can become more engaged. So I think automation is going to be critical to the future of the contact center, because it allows for efficiencies, it allows for scale, but the key is identifying the practical use cases where automation can be applied, because applying automation in any business context does take effort. It's not like a switch that you just turn on, woo, automate everything. You have to think about the logic, the integrations, the workflows, the connections, the data exchanges. So it takes some time, but I think then the knock-on and the benefits further on down the line are pretty substantial, especially, the customers that we've been working with, they've definitely seen that. There's short-term wins and there's longer-term wins, but I think if you want to scale the contact center and scale customer experience, automation is a key enabler to that.
Great, thanks. And Robin, what did your research tell you? Does that support, that's what Jennifer just said?
Yeah, absolutely. We are definitely seeing that the companies rather are hiring. First of all, most of them are hiring more agents. So this is kind of a fallacy in the industry right now. Like, everyone thinks that, automation is just going to end up resulting in lost jobs. We monitor this year over year, and I keep waiting for that to happen to see if that's actually the case. But right now, what we're seeing is that 48.7% of companies still plan to increase the number of agents this year. Only 11.5% plan to decrease. The balance are just staying flat, or they're unsure. So, you're still seeing a big chunk of companies hiring more agents, and 61% are hiring more agents, or hiring those agents with more skills and experience. Areas like technology experience, multilingual skills, product-specific knowledge, sales background, all sorts of different skills and experience they're looking for. But I'll tell you where we are seeing fewer agents, and that's in some of the basic functions. We don't need agents anymore to tell you what the overnight mailing address is or what your account balance is. I mean, that's there's no reason to pay a person to do that. You can have a virtual assistant do that. But we are definitely seeing companies wanting to hire more skilled and more experienced agents. Well, what's driving that? The number one reason for that is companies want to improve their customer ratings, and they know that if they have more skilled and more experienced agents, that's going to happen. We're also seeing companies say, hey, we're going to be doing more work from home, and that requires more responsible agents, in our opinion. We're not sure, we're ready to hire a brand new agent who with absolutely no experience to work from a home office. You need some hand-holding initially to get things started. Equally as important, new products require new expertise. And I saw that a lot in our most recent research is that companies said, even prior to the pandemic, they were developing new product lines. During the pandemic, they took advantage of some of the time that they had people in, sort of in home offices and not traveling to expand their product base. And in doing that, they needed new contact center agents with particular expertise. For example, one healthcare company developed a product for, it had a sensor in it where patients went home and they needed their contact center then staffed by RNs, registered nurses, to be able to, interpret the data that was coming back from those devices and make sure that the patients were doing what they needed to be doing. Well, that's more expensive than hiring, a brand new agent out of school. So those are some of the things. CX initiatives are just getting more complex by definition. Mm-hmm. They're adding more sales capabilities in there. So a lot of times now we're seeing, even if you're in a service center and you're just responding to customer questions, you now as an agent have some quota, some responsibility for upsell, cross-sell, getting your customers to look at other products and services that you offer. And in other cases, they're really just trying to reduce turnover rates as well. So one other data point that I think is really important when we look at automation, the 43% of companies today have automated some agent functions. Of those, 78% have seen at least a 31% increase in productivity. So the key message there is just when you automate, you're going to see some good results. Yep. You're going to see some measurable business results.
And that's what everyone needs right now, right? Because there's no bags of money sitting around in the contact center or in other parts of the business. Yep. As much as everyone talks about the importance of customer experience, there's still, how do I get the dollars to be able to do that? And so I think being able to combine the, reimagining the customer experience with also realizing results and tangible results that can have an impact and then allow you to reinvest back into your business is really critical. So that number I think is super important, because a 31% increase in productivity is pretty substantial, especially when you multiply that across all of the various tasks that you could automate.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we can't have a conversation about customer engagement and contact center nowadays without a bit of artificial intelligence. And, artificial intelligence feeds off data. And so I was keen to kind of just explore a little bit, first of all, Robin, around kind of role of data in customer experience. And given that we've got all these different channels involved nowadays, and that's on the increase, what is the role of data in CX right now, do you think?
Well, you're talking to a person who just absolutely loves data. Data tells a story. Data gives us information. It tells us what we need to change. It just tells us so many things, and it changes. It can change by the second, by the minute, by the hour. There's so many different ways you can cut and slice and dice data. I think without it, you're at a competitive disadvantage. So when we look at data, there's a couple different ways you can look at it in the CX space. So the first thing I think that more companies need to be doing is measuring their before and after numbers whenever they do a new project from a business perspective, because the business units, they want to know, they don't care as much about things that you look at in the contact center, like call handle time or first call resolution. They care more about their business metrics. So we look at 4 key areas: driving revenue, reducing cost, improving the customer experience measured by your ratings, and improving your agent or employee productivity. So that's generally measured by time. How long does it take you to do something, or how long does it take you overall in a day to accomplish X, whatever X is. So it's really important to look at those 4 metrics. And I'll give you an example as far as how many people are doing it. In our last research study of 700 companies, only about 300 were doing these measurements, or even just one of these measurements. So I think that's a big deficiency in the industry right now. You've got to be looking at numbers. You've got to be looking at measurements. Otherwise, when you add new technologies, when you add a new process, when you add new agents, you don't know how they're performing. You don't know how you may know how they're performing, but you don't know how their performance or how the technology is affecting the numbers that really matter in your organization. Are you making more money? Are you reducing your costs? Are your customers happier? Or are your agents more efficient? Those are the things you really need to know, and you'll constantly be adjusting those numbers as time goes on. You'll be looking, adjusting, re-looking, readjusting. It's a continuous cycle. So those are kind of the high level numbers that I think are really important to look at. Now, as far as the more detailed numbers within the contact center for KPIs, again, another important area to be looking at, but an area that's changing quite a bit. For a long time, and the things I'll highlight, well, first of all, when you think about KPIs in the contact center, right now, the number one KPI companies are looking at is CSAT. How satisfied are customers? Remember, customers are powerful. One viral social media post can either make or break your company. So that's very important. You want to be measuring that. Then you want to correlate those measurements with what you're actually doing in the contact center. Well, we've really been focusing on first call resolution this month. And look, our ratings have gone up by, 0.8 of a point or whatever it might be. That kind of tells you, okay, this is something we need to continue focusing on. Or, boy, we're going to really work on call handle time. We want each agent to handle 20% more calls per day. Now the agents are rushed and they're on the phone and they're getting customers off, and the customers aren't happy about this. Now your CSAT may go down. So you have to really look at these types of things and decide what makes sense for you.
Yeah, thanks, Robin. And Jennifer, from your perspective, I mean, Five9 as a technology vendor, you love data as well, don't you? So, but aside to the metrics, it's equally important, to, I suppose, feed the machine data so it can respond appropriately. I mean,
well, I think it is. I mean, data has just so many different uses. I mean, so whether you're looking at reporting, whether you're looking at how do you use data in order to be able to, like you said, feed machine learning and artificial intelligence. But I think that the other thing that you need to really think about is it's not enough just to capture the data. You have to get the insights from the data and ensure that you don't start to develop data silos as well. Very often the contact center might start to develop, their right KPIs, capture their data, capture their CSAT, as Robin said, with, CSAT being one of the most prevalent metrics that are out there. But how are you actually gaining insights from that data, and how are you using that data in a meaningful way? Data is useless in and of itself, or it's has very limited use in and of itself, but you need to be able to, put the logic on it. What's it telling us? What should we do with it? And then take action from it. What's the point in having data and insights if you don't start to take action from it and make changes? I think NPS is a great example of that. So often I see big customers who look at their NPS and they look at all the different things that are affecting their loyalty and their customer experience, but then they have the data and they don't do anything with it. They don't share it. They don't sit down and sort of say, okay, well, what does this mean and what's the impact on the revenue? So I think that's the other important thing as well, is how can you, when you're looking at the vendors that you're working with for any part of your sort of customer experience tool chain, how do they allow you to share data and also get insights from the data so that it sort of up levels your data game, if you will?
I have to just echo that. That's one of my pet peeves too. I've talked to so many companies where, oh yes, we're gathering data. Yes, we're analyzing the data. Okay, what do you do? That's where it stops. They don't take action. And it's just like it's wasting everyone's time at that point.
Great. So, Robin, I just want to kind of look over towards the technology for a moment and think about cloud contact center technology. That must be high on the list for a lot of organizations, certainly on the back of the pandemic, having to move to kind of home working solutions, etc. But, do we think that, CCaaS, cloud contact center as a service, is going to be the kind of de facto solution going forward?
Well, Rob, I think we're already seeing that. The cloud contact center is a de facto standard for small, mid-sized businesses for sure. And I would say it's moving in that direction for larger businesses. That said, I don't think every large contact center is going to move their core contact center platform to the cloud. However, that doesn't mean they're not going to be using the cloud. I think they're going to be innovating over the top with cloud-based applications, from either Cloud CX or CPaaS providers. I think they'll also use cloud for their home agents, and then maybe integrate that into an on-premises. I just talked to so many companies where they're really wedded to that on-premises platform. It's been decades in the making, and they have so many custom apps, and the thought of moving it is just fearful. They're just fearful of doing that. But that said, they really do see the value of being in the cloud. So I see that. In some cases, you see large companies saying, you know what, we're going to do it. We're moving everything to the cloud. And others, it's like, we're not quite there yet, but we do want to, innovate over the top. And I think that's where all the cloud providers can kind of come in and help out with those companies. And then it's more of a gradual move, over time, everything kind of moves over to the cloud, but it's just much more functional. Those who want to stay on-prem are typically the people who say, we need control. We want to maintain all control of everything, and those who are moving to the cloud are saying, you know what? We can't keep up with the pace of innovation. We can't keep up with all the changes happening in CX. We're going to let our expert partner do that, deal with the day-to-day and make sure everything's moving, and come to us with advice. Come to us and say, hey, you should be thinking about this technology or this new feature or this new add-on. And we and our company can now think of how we can apply the technology to our organization and make it that much better.
Yeah, and I would agree. I mean, I think, cloud undeniably acts as a force multiplier, right, for various different reasons. We saw this in the infrastructure space, where you saw, for example, dev and test teams moving to the cloud first, and then everything else sort of went with it. But we're definitely working with a lot of customers in, pre-cloud phase or hybrid phase, where, for example, you can take things like, intelligent virtual agents and connect them to your on-premise contact center, your on-premise ACD, etc. So I think there's definitely opportunity of where you can do things to start your journey to cloud, and then over time you can move, you can move wholesale to the cloud as well. So we're definitely seeing that hybrid mode working. We're working with a number of customers who are doing that, and they're using Five9 in a pre-cloud mode. And then, once you get to the cloud, it is that force multiplier. And I think, if we look at, where things are going, definitely I'd summarize it, and it's things that we've talked about in this conversation, right? It's the adoption of practical and impactful AI, automation and analytics, and using each of those technologies to help create a differentiated, not just a better, but a differentiated customer experience. And also using those technologies in order to be able to change the role of the contact center in the business as a whole, that it's not a silo sitting outside of the broader IT process. There are ways to bring the two together in order to create more synergy and to create more impact for the business as a whole and for the revenue number as a whole.
Yeah, and the one thing I would add to that, I totally agree with all that, and AI integration, analytics, all of that. I think the other thing that moving to the cloud helps, you don't have to be in the cloud, but moving to the cloud helps, is all the workforce optimization, workforce engagement capabilities. Yep. I think that's becoming much more important moving forward as we have permanent work from home agents, and we're really trying to optimize their performance. We're trying to manage people across multiple time zones remotely and everything. I think that's another important factor we can't ignore.
Yeah, definitely. I think this notion of, hybrid or bimodal is definitely, you can apply it to so many different concepts, whether it be you having part of your solution on premise and part in the cloud, whether it be, sometimes using live agents, sometimes using digital and IVA only or self-service only. So I think there's definitely that bimodal is definitely going to be a key element, I would say, going forward.
Absolutely. And there's tons more information on these topics on five9.com and metrigy.com. And Jennifer, you've got some events coming up, is that correct?
We do, yeah. So there's a number of different events. We've got some events happening in Europe where we'll have our EMEA Summit, where we'll be bringing together a number of customers to talk about things like, maturity models, how do they move to the cloud, what should they move to the cloud, when should they move to the cloud. And we'll also be inviting our partners to join that and actually host some of those sessions with us. And then we've got some great ongoing webinar series that talk about that notion of practical AI and also impactful results, because it is all about how do you reimagine CX, but how do you realize results at the same time so that you can show that business value back.
Fantastic. Hey, Jennifer and Robin, it's been really good speaking to you today. Thanks very much for sharing your insights with me.
Excellent. Thank you, Rob.
Yeah, thank you, Rob.
And that's it from us. If you've enjoyed today's session, please subscribe to CX Today News and give this video a quick share on social, as it's always appreciated. And if you're a CX fan and want to be part of the conversation, you can join us using the CX News hashtag on LinkedIn, Twitter and Facebook. And our social links are in the description. So I'm Rob Scott from CX Today. Thanks for watching.